Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
The uneasy truce between supporters of Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn and the majority of Labour MPs is under renewed strain this week. First from MPs from the right and centre of the party. They swept the board at elections for posts that will give them a role in policy making. Then Mr Corbyn's senior policy advisor. He's a young man called Andrew Fisher. He was suspended from the party apparently after Blairite MPs complained he had backed an anarchist at the general election rather than the Labour candidate in the Croydon constituency. Now, we already know that at least one MP wants to trigger a leadership election if next May's election results are underwhelming for Labour. But if there is a contest, how would it work? What hurdles would face Mr Corbyn and his potential challengers? Our Giles has been delving into the Labour Party rule book. Be warned, there's flash photography.
That some Labour MPs did not and do not want Jeremy Corbyn as leader of the party is a fact. That there are internal tensions between some MPs and Jeremy Corbyn's team is clearly a fact. That Labour has not removed a sitting leader since 1935 is a fact. And that Jeremy Corbyn won the ballot to become leader with a whisker off 60% of the vote is also a fact. What's surprising about these facts is that it's Jeremy Corbyn's team themselves who are very keen to see the rules surrounding any challenge to the leadership clarified. Why? Because when it comes to the rule book, the mechanism for such a challenge is very far from clear. It starts well enough with Chapter 4, Clause 2, B2, the so-called no vacancy route. The wording of this clause is in fact already out of date as of last conference, as any MP who can get 20% of support from Labour parliamentarians, that's MPs and now MEPs, which as of now means 50 names, can mount a challenge. Whether there's anyone who could do that at the moment is a very moot point, however much some might wish there was. If they get them, they then write to the party general secretary and a leadership process is triggered. Then Labour's National Executive Committee decides the timetable and procedural guidelines for a contest. The problem is, nowhere in the rules is it specified what happens next. It seems within party circles, depending on their views, there are three interpretations. 1. The challenger or challengers are put on the ballot with their 20% nominations, but the incumbent leader then needs 15% of Labour parliamentarians to nominate them so they too can appear on it.
He's not popular inside the PLP. I think that's very, very clear. And so if he doesn't get a buy and go through automatically, he's got to go around knocking on doors and getting people to actually sign the forms, and he might not do it.
Scenario 2. The challenger is on the ballot, others may also seek 20% nomination threshold, and they too appear, but the leader is automatically included.
The idea that the incumbent, someone who's commanded 60% of the electorate in the Labour Party, would not be on the ballot paper, yet someone who is at best on the fringes of the Labour Party could be, is obviously unthinkable.
And scenario 3, only the named challenger goes forward with their 20% nomination, and it's a straight binary head-to-head with the leader, who again is automatically in the contest. Mr Corbyn might need more protective gear from scenario 1 and 2, but this programme understands option 3 is what the current leader's team and the party solicitor think is the correct interpretation. Of course, any talk of leadership challenges might well upset the 60% of those who clearly wanted Jeremy Corbyn not only to lead the party, but lead it into the 2020 general election.
this wouldn't happen in any other organisation where you'd have a new CEO judged on metrics that it happened, you know, in the first few weeks of his performance. So let's give him a little bit more time before we start mounting challenges or talking about challenges, because he does have an overwhelming mandate right across the Labour movement.
Nonetheless, in bars and offices across Westminster, some Labour MPs are thinking into the night how they can stop Jeremy Corbyn. And some have no desire to remove him, but think the idea of challenging any leader is important as an idea.
As a historian, I realise the Labour Party has a major problem with deselecting its leader. And I want a situation where it can say the guy isn't, or the woman, is not doing a decent job, and therefore they've got to go. And I think it would help him immensely, because if he actually had a challenge and won, he's there for the next 2 or 3 years, isn't he? So I don't think it's an anti-Corbyn thing at all, no.
So if the rules were clarified, would it make a challenge more or less likely?
I can't see it happening for a very long time. At the moment, the only way to be able to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn, if that is what you want, is to start convincing people that he shouldn't be leader. And I see absolutely no evidence of that happening at all.
Of course, that doesn't mean someone won't try.
Polly, even if the parliamentary party had the stomach for a coup, in essence, against Mr Corbyn, it would result in civil war, would it not, within the party? Because it would, the next election would go back to the same electorate that elected Mr Corbyn.
Of course, the only circumstance in which it could happen is if it has become absolutely obvious that he's a disaster. If, say, he were to lose by-elections, if next May was a disaster. By disaster, I mean it would have to be significantly worse even than Ed Miliband's results. It would have to, because after all, Labour doesn't get rid of its leaders. And I think until something of that kind happens, where you have a really persuasive argument that there is not a hope in hell of him winning the next election, that might bring the party round. But obviously they have to, any rebels have to bring enough of the party round to see, look, winning is what really matters, and this guy isn't going to win for us.
Are people plotting coups already? Are they at least
they are? They're called the counter-revolutionaries, and they're all absolutely delighted with themselves in the PLP, the Parliamentary Labour Party, because they've just got a series of modernisers, Blairites, call them what you like, who've got elected to the chairmanship of these PLP committees. I think 10 of the 15 voted for Liz Kendall. They think, aren't we marvellous, haven't we done well? But the problem for the PLP, for the Parliamentary Labour Party, is they have the power to trigger a contest, a leadership contest, but they do not have the power to decide that contest. That will be decided by the membership, who overwhelmingly voted for Jeremy Corbyn. And I agree with Polly. I think it would take a catastrophic meltdown of the Labour Party over the next year in elections to get that contest taking place. But even if you had that contest, I still think you would find, but because he's only been there a year, the Corbynites would say, look, it's not our fault, give him more time. And you'd probably find, even in those circumstances, Jeremy Corbyn or a Jeremy Corbyn person would win that contest.
But Mr Corbyn does sometimes create unnecessary problems for himself. Let me just show you this clip from Andrew Fisher. He was made a political advisor to Mr Corbyn. He's now been suspended from the party, but he's still working for the Labour leader. One of his problems is that this is what he had to say.
I had the most excruciating half hour of my life where I was sat in a room with James Purnell. I sometimes have nightmares, very violent, bloody nightmares about it, actually. Fantasies, possibly. But it was excruciating. And he said, look, we've got to explain to people there's more to life than moving from the bedroom to the sofa. That was his attitude towards people who are unemployed. And, you know, for this sort of plummy, accented, Oxbridge-educated, you know, Tory in a red rosette, frankly, to be saying that was just the most offensive thing I've ever heard, and it took every sinew of my self-discipline not to thump him.
Though Mr Fisher's no stranger to offence himself, having called other Labour people vile gits and scumbags. You wonder why Mr Corbyn feel he needs someone like this?
Yeah, and if you think that Mr Corbyn is trying to prevent an internal putsch against himself, why he would be making several of the personnel decisions he's made in recent weeks. They're very provocative gestures. I suppose if you're the moderates and you're trying to get him out, your hope has to be that the new members who have changed the composition of the Labour Party are not hardened militant-style machine activists who will defend him to the last ditch, but are actually, you know, dreamers and kids who got excited over the summer will flake away in the coming years and will realise that internal party warfare means turning up to tedious meetings on a wet Thursday night, and actually they won't be there to protect him in the worst instance. I think Polly is right that he won't go unless he's obviously a disaster, but I don't think he'll come across as an obvious disaster until the spring of 2020, by which time it's too late and Labour have already lost the next election.
All right, we'll leave it there.
I've been getting away with it